And then Charlie's right next to us, between us. Right next to us. That's
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. You're at a city council meeting, and this is Monday, May 6th, 2019. And we're going to start this meeting with a roll call to determine if there's a quorum.
Solomon, Modrick, Nordstrom, Drew, Scott, Drury, Laurenti, Roberts, Armstrong, Lewis. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Tonight's invocation will be by Dr. Sandra Ogunremi, and after this, then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, everyone. As I was driving, I was praying, and I asked God, what do I share with them? And the Lord laid it in my heart to share based on the things that direct my life. I'm an Assemblies of God ordained minister. I love God. I love people. I'm committed to making a difference. And I work for Regional Health, where we focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I oversee that, and our mission statement is to make a difference every day. And I started thinking about those things as well as the scriptures. And a verse came to my heart, some verses came to my heart that I'm going to share with you before I pray. Galatians 5, verse 22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit, the result of His presence within us, is love, unselfish concern for others, joy, inner peace, patience, not the ability to wait, but how we act while we are waiting, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. And when you look at verse 26 of the same chapter, it says, we must not ever become conceited, challenging or provoking one another, envying one another. The goal that we have in life is to follow the fruit of the Spirit and to be really kind to one another. And so that's my prayer for tonight, as I pray that everything we do tonight will be done with the presence of the Lord, and that love will prevail, and gentleness will prevail, and goodness will prevail, and kindness will prevail. And the way we communicate will bring glory to God, and that we will be faithful in doing these things, no matter how we feel about parking or no parking, about tickets or no tickets, about fines or no fines, that we will have self-control. Let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, we come before you. We thank you for all the people dedicated to our city, Lord, to serving and making a difference every single day. For the people that love you, God, that love people and want to see good things occur in our city, in our county. Thank you for everyone, Lord. I speak blessings upon them, Father. I speak blessings upon those who are here to speak and to talk and to give their opinions. I speak blessings upon Rapid City, upon Pennington County, Lord, upon the state of South Dakota, upon our nation, Father. I just ask in Jesus' name that your presence will prevail and the fruit of the Spirit will be made manifest, Lord. And at the end of the day, everyone will know that the best decisions have been made for our community. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for everything. We love you, Father, and we thank you in Jesus' name. And everyone said, Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Now we will adopt the agenda. This is a time when the council may adopt the agenda as written, or they may make modifications to it. So would there be a motion from the council? Motion to adopt from Jason Solomon, and a second by Darla Drew. Seeing no comments, all in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And now we have a few awards and recognitions. And first, I would like to call up Public Works Director Dale Tech. And I'll read a couple excerpts from a press release. The state of South Dakota has recognized the city of Rapid City for the quality and efficiency of both its public water and wastewater systems in separate awards issued by the State Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. This is the Secretary's Award for Drinking Water Excellence. For the 16th consecutive year, the City of Rapid City's public water system is being recognized with the Secretary's Award for Drinking Water Excellence. The award recognizes the city's water system and system specialists for demonstrating excellence in water system management and maintenance. And likewise, the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources has selected the City of Rapid City and its wastewater treatment system for the 2018 Operation and Maintenance Wastewater Treatment Award. The award recognizes outstanding operation of the wastewater system and the environmental compliance with the state surface water discharge permit during the past year. Qualifications are based on the system compliance with state environmental requirements, quality of the treated and discharged wastewater, monitoring reports, state inspections, and proper operation and maintenance of the wastewater treatment facility. And I've had the pleasure of touring both of those systems just to ensure I never get them mixed up. And Dale Tech is a Public Works Director and oversees both operations, and so I want to turn it over to let Mr. Tech say a few words about the awards.
Thank you, Mayor. These two awards really belong to the fine folks that we have working for the City of Rapid City that dedicate their careers to ensuring that we have safe drinking water as well as high-quality wastewater discharge. So these folks take their jobs very, very seriously. They're highly trained, highly certified, and really take great pride in what they do. So I would be happy to accept this award on their behalf, and I know they will continue to do this way into the future. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, now we have a proclamation. for National Small Business Week. I have to have Pam Selberg and company. This is National Small Business Week around the nation, and so we have an executive proclamation from the mayor's office. Whereas Americans' progress has been driven by pioneers who think big, take risks, and work hard, and whereas from the storefront shops that anchor Main Street to the high-tech startups that keep America on the cutting edge, small businesses are the backbone of our economy and the cornerstones of our nation's promise. And whereas small business owners and Main Street businesses have energy and a passion for what they do, and whereas when we support small businesses, jobs are created and local communities preserve their unique culture. And whereas this country's 30 million small businesses create nearly 2 out of 3 net new jobs in our economy, we cannot resolve ourselves to create jobs and spur economic growth in America without discussing ways to support our entrepreneurs. And whereas the President of the United States has proclaimed National Small Business Week every year since 1963 to highlight the programs and services available to entrepreneurs through the U.S. Small Business Administration and other government agencies. And now, therefore, I, Steve Allender, Mayor of Rapid City, do hereby proclaim May 5th through the 11th, 2019, as National Small Business Week in Rapid City in support of the national effort to help America's small businesses grow their businesses, create jobs, and ensure our communities remain vibrant tomorrow as they are today. So, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jamie Wood. I'm the State Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration's South Dakota District Office. My office is actually in Sioux Falls, and Pam Selberg here is in our Rapid City SBA office. And Mr. Mayor and council members and public, glad to announce that the health and wellness of small business in South Dakota is alive and kicking. 99% even of our businesses in South Dakota are small, but we have room for more. So thank you for your support and your acknowledgement of Small Business Week. This is our premier week of the year where we actually can amplify all the goodness of small businesses. And so we're ready to get more people in small business. So let them know about our resources. Thank you very much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Picture here. Okay, there are no general public comment request forms, so we'll skip general public comment and go right into non-public hearing items. 4 through 75, and we'll open public comment on items 4 through 62. And we have some speaker requests for items 55. First one is Amy. Could you state your name so that we say it correctly?
Yes, it's Amy Tarmina.
Okay. Go ahead, and you have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
I am a resident of East St. Francis Street. I've lived there since 2011. And since 2011, we've been told repeatedly that the road would be fixed. Now, also since 2011, we have bought large filters for our house because of all the dust. We just thought that was par for the course. And we buy the Honeywell media air cleaners. They're 20 by 25 by 4. We buy them in bulk at this point, and they last about a month at the worst, a month and a half at the best before we have to change them out. The dust is thick and it permeates everything, specifically when it's dry. My son, he's 15, he has asthma. He has to sleep with the machine, and he has allergies. I myself have allergies. It's a nightmare. Please do something. Please get rid of my dust. Take it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Charles on the same item. If you could state your name too, Charles, I appreciate that.
My name is Charles Clody, K-L-O-D-E. I too am a resident of East St. Francis Street. I brought an exhibit. I didn't know if I was allowed to or not. This is my first public venue since retiring from the Air Force last August. I've officially become a resident of this great state. So I've lived on that street since 2009. A couple of my neighbors have lived there longer than I have. They've chosen not to come up here. They've put their trust in me to tell you how bad it is. I have to sleep with a breathing device at night. This is also a 30-day air filter. I have sleep apnea, and I am required, I could go into what that causes if it goes untreated, but I only have 3 minutes. Our lawns are being choked out. There's a light gray hue to the lawns during the summertime. And again, when it is the driest, it is the absolute worst. I have probably gone through 3 to 4 air filters within the past couple of years on my vehicles because it gets caked in there because it's so fine. I don't know what the rocks and the relaying of dust is doing for the dust problem or what people have been told, but it is not fixing it. So, and again, please fix our road. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all for the speaker requests from items 4 through 62. So we'll close the public comment period and move on to consent items 4 through 62. There'll be a motion to either approve these items or remove specific items from the council. We'll go to Lisa Modrick.
55.
Okay, Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove item number 60 and 61.
Okay, any others? If not, could I have a motion, please, to approve the consent items minus 55, 60, and 61. And I heard a motion from Lewis and a second from Laurenti to that effect. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 55 is to approve approximately $80,000 to pave East St. Francis Street. And we'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion and retain the floor to approve up to $80,000 to pave East St. Francis. Thank you.
Okay,
for
we
the
have a second from Solomon. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank CIP for taking a look at this, and I really want to thank Dale for finding the Out of the Dust funds to be able to conquer this problem of over a decade. For those that have been living there, I know we submitted a couple of pictures to you. Those were winter pictures, and you're hearing the summer is even worse than winter. So with this funding Out of the Dust, we're going to maybe get you out of the dust with approval. And this and other projects are an asset to our community and to our people. And again, I thank CIP for recognizing that and seeing that this is a good funding project for the summer. And in planning side, they said, or in public works side, Dale thought we could get right on it this summer. And if I'm out speaking that, let me know, Dale, but we're excited to get that done. So I thank you. I hope we get the support for item 55.
Okay, we're going to go to Public Works Director Dale Tech for a moment.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like you to clarify your motion. You said up to 80,000. It needs to be approximately 80,000. We want to make sure we don't limit ourselves. So if the costs come in a little bit higher, we can make sure we get it done. So okay.
We have an amended motion to that effect to be approximately $80,000, and that's okay with the seconder, Jason Solomon. So thank you for that. We'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And may I ask Mr. Dale Tech a few questions on this item?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So Dale, I did read the minutes on this. It was brought forward at the CIP meeting, turned into a motion. My questions revolve around the minutes that I read. There were some higher numbers that were thrown out, that if it was going to be a full street project, that it would be much higher, 550,000, something like that. And in the minutes it said that if that was undertaken, something else in the list of CIP would have to be pushed out in order to do this project. And thank you to Alderwoman Modrick for supplying the pictures, because I pulled up the pictures, and granted they're in a wet season and not the summer where it's dry, but it looks like, and the minutes said, that there would continue, even if this road is paved, there's still going to be drainage issues. So one of my questions is, will the drainage issues, if the city spends money to pave this, approximately $80,000, will the drainage cause erosion of this investment?
In my opinion, no. This area is so very flat, that's why we have all the water there. Paving the road and doing some of the minor drainage work involved with just hard surfacing the road should take care of most of that. If we were to go in and build an urban section with curb, gutter, all of that, we would have to put an underground piping system in that would have to go at least a quarter mile. So we're talking a 7-figure project to be able to do something to that level. So in an effort to just get the road hard surfaced, to cut down on the mud, to cut down on the dust, this is a very appropriate treatment for this roadway.
Okay. So then my other question is how did a road in the city, how did a neighborhood in the city get built with no road?
This was originally built in Pennington County and then was subsequently annexed by the city. As I understand it, the lots existed, there was no improvements in the right-of-way. Individual purchased all the lots, started building homes, built the road, built a gravel road, if you will. At the time, the county had a moratorium, and I believe they still do, of adding any roads to their road system. So it was never a county-maintained road. They never took it on their system and somehow approved this road to exist in the county. When the city annexed this whole South Valley area in 2009, the city took this road in. Our policy has been if it's public right-of-way and it gets annexed in the city, it becomes city maintenance. So it was never county maintenance before, and when it was annexed, it became city maintenance.
Okay. So since this is the only street that's being identified that's in this condition, everything else that was annexed has roads out there now?
There are other gravel roadways. Actually, we have about 8 miles of gravel roads throughout the entire city, Rapid City. So we've got a number of locations where it's gravel, always has been gravel. We're not going to make any commitment to get every single one of them paved, because typically there are issues that prevent just going in and paving, primarily with utilities. So In this instance, there are new service lines, the underground utility mains that are in the location are in good shape. We don't believe that there's any cause to not pave it due to the underground issues. Certainly, it's a good choice to pave due to the dust and mud.
So then my final question, because I've got about a minute. So I just want to make sure that we're still doing a good analysis before we just pick roads randomly to go out and do. So what I'm hearing from you, Dale, is that this road has been reviewed by your department, and even though it was brought up as a CIP as a standalone issue, it does fit within your criteria that it is a high priority road to go ahead and do something with?
Yes, and the primary reason is it is primary access for these homes. It was historically known as out of the dust where we're paving alleyways. Well, we should be focusing our money on paving people's primary access instead of paving an alley behind their house. So as far as our criteria and policy, that certainly fits that checkbox.
Okay, so with the other 8 miles that you've got, and since this was brought up at CIP, granted, this road, if it's approved tonight, will get taken care of this summer, hopefully. So is your direction or your focus now going to be to go back and look at those 8 miles and find those other gravel roads that are primary access, and we're going to build those into the CIP plan?
We review that annually as part of the old Out of the Dust program. So if there are gravel roads out there that provide primary access, we look at those and try to prioritize those higher than alleyways. This is more of a maintenance issue. The way the priority was approved by City Council a number of years ago, that it's our street department that has to go out and either add gravel, shape gravel. Those are the priorities of what we have, or what we should be doing. We have a number of very steep alleys that every time it rains, all the gravel washes out into a paved road. Those have been a priority for us due to the public safety issues with that gravel being washed out onto a paved road. So we evaluate this annually, and we're doing everything we can with the funding that we have available. I don't see us adding substantially to paving unpaved roads at this point in time. We're doing what we can. If the City Council could come up with another $100,000 a year, I'd be happy to accommodate more paving.
Thank you. At this point, I think we'd just be robbing Peter to pay Paul to try to come up with those funds. But thank you for entertaining my questions. I yield.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Dale Tech, please.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times we use city speak here, and we don't even realize that the people that might be sitting out there have never attended a council meeting before. So could you define CIP and where that money comes from?
CIP stands for Capital Improvement Plan or Program. A portion of our sales tax dollars goes to public works infrastructure. So those are the dollars that we use to do street maintenance, do paving, do complete reconstruction. So we have a balance of many miles of city streets, 400 streets, that we have to program the money that we allocate or are allocated every year to some type of maintenance.
But CIP is a special fund, right, from the vision? Isn't that the...
They're separate. They're not the same.
Talk to me about that.
Identified in ordinance as its own specific fund that receives sales tax dollars. So as one can imagine, we are fiscally constrained as far as how many miles of streets we have, what our need is financially, and how much we actually get. So every year we spend all those dollars, and we don't have enough money to cover all of our needs.
And I have a question for Richie Nordstrom.
Okay.
Hi, Richie. You're the chair of the CIP?
Yes.
Approximately how much money comes out of that funding a year for streets?
Just for the streets, and I can be corrected by the Public Works Director, Dale Tech, but approximately $20 million is spent just on streets, but in combination with some other fundings, because what we are is priority driven based on primarily if a water main blows up several times, then we make that particular street a higher priority. But in this case here, I inherited this street when I first became on the City Council. We started addressing the dust issue back in around 2011, and then the district lines changed and it became a Ward 1 area in that point, and then Lisa Modrick became involved in it. But essentially, with that team effort, if you will, the process to get this street on a higher priority is that we have to reevaluate, readjust some other items in there, but the bottom line is we just have a limited number of dollars in this fund. So thank you for the question. So
One more follow-up question. So how long does this plan for street repair go out? I mean, does it extend 2 years, 3 years? What is the extension of this plan?
great question. We get together once a year, and we do a 5-year plan. And each year, we put together the 5th year of those 5-year plans. And that's where approximately $26 million in total is what we get to work with. And again, I can stand to be corrected by the finance office on this one here as well. But that's total of all the CIP projects, not just streets, but we have also parks in there. We've got some other capital, such as government buildings, that are involved in this entire list. So that's approximately where we're at right now. And we go through this annual process of making priorities. Staff does a great job of figuring out what they need to get done first. And sometimes we have to shoehorn in a special project such as this. And I think it's a worthwhile project to get what we call shoehorning it into the middle of everything. And then that means other projects have to be pushed down a little bit. But this one here is a critical mass, if you will, so it needs to be addressed.
Well, I just think for anyone listening, it's good to understand that we do have a 5-year plan, and so if you do want to see what kind of order your street might be in, or how you could get your street as to be part of that plan, you know, you can contact the CIP group. You can look at the map. You can see what, you know, position your street might be in for repair, and it makes a lot of people feel better, even if they're 3 years out, just to know that in 3 years that is going to happen. So I just wanted to reiterate that this is a 5-year plan, and so, you know, we work at this constantly. It's really something, roads are extremely important to us, and they're also extremely expensive. So to do this, we need a long-term plan, and that's a CIP. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go to Finance Officer Pauline Sumption for a fact check.
Very good, Mr. Mayor. Actually, it's about $20 million. In 2019, it's 19.5 from all revenue sources. About 16.7 million of that is from sales tax revenue. The rest is from other funding sources.
Okay, thank you. So do we still have a motion on the table for 55 for approval? For approximately $80,000. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now on to item 60. Approve award of base bid plus alternate number 1 for the total bid for Harney Little League improvements, fence, bleachers, dugouts, project number PR 19-6170, opened on April 30th, 2019 to the lowest responsible bidder, Complete Concrete, doing business as Complete Contracting Solutions, in the amount of $141,511. And we'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Jeff Bigler's already at the podium. If I can ask him some clarifying questions?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So before a motion can be made, Jeff, I understand that there needs to be some correction on this so the motion maker knows exactly what we're proposing, because there's some clerical errors in the numbers.
Correct, and thank you very much for pulling this item. I apologize for not catching these corrections to the allocation for this project. Thanks to our very astute finance officer, we're able to catch this before it goes for a vote. As we had listed on the bid award summary, the numbers for the amount coming out of Vision Fund and out of Parks and Rec CIP need to be corrected as follows. And the Vision Fund amount needs to be $93,667.04 coming out of Cost Center 0125. And the amount coming out of the Parks and Rec CIP should be $47,843.96 coming out of Cost Center 8912. The total doesn't change at all, just the allocation of where the funding comes out of.
And thank you, Jeff, and since I didn't make the motion because we needed those figures, I'll leave it up to one of my peers to make the motion.
Thank you.
I yield.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor? Okay, Richie Nordstrom, motion to approve as amended. Second by Chad Lewis. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 61, award total bid in the amount of $92,312.50 to Pete Lane and Sons Incorporated, opened on April 30th, 2019, for ready-mix concrete for various city departments. And we'll go to Amanda Scott so she can abstain from the vote.
Yes, Mayor, that's all I was really, reason I was pulling this is I need to abstain from this vote. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve by Solomon, second by Drury. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that takes us through consent items. And now into non-consent items 63 through 75. We have a few speaker request forms. So when I call your name up, please approach the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. You can watch the lights over here to see how you're doing. And first on items 65 and 66, Kurt Small.
Good evening. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak on this. My whole concern throughout this whole process has been the summer months, which, as everybody knows, downtown is a different environment between Memorial Day and Labor Day. That is where my real concerns lie. Now, the city's been doing a great job of collecting data over like the past 6 months, October through April. And I think that data is pretty close to in line what I observed downtown. The one thing that we don't have is any data June, July, August. We have a one-day snapshot from Walker and Associates, and that's it for the summer months. I don't believe that the data collected October through April is going to be in line with the data that should be collected in June, July, and August. I could be wrong, I'm speculating, but honestly, anybody else's projections is speculating too, because we simply don't have data for those months. Thursday night's meeting was really productive. I hope there was a means for people that couldn't attend to see what was discussed by various businesses from one end of downtown to another. A lot of good things that I hadn't considered either, just because I don't reside in that part of downtown. Some great exchanges. I thought Sarah did a great job fielding a lot of challenging questions from every direction. I would really like to see this council delay this vote or postpone it until we can at least get a month, maybe 2 months of summertime data, just so we know what we're walking into. Like I said, the one example would be the average visit of a person downtown. The data that we have is not, in my opinion, going to reflect the number that it really is June through August. I know this council is very heavy on relying on data, which is great. So am I as a small business owner. The bottom line is, save for a one-day snapshot, we have zero data June through August. Please consider that when you're voting on these. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. And on the same item, Casey Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council and the staff. I was also at the Thursday meeting. I've sent you all an email about some of my concerns. I know that that doesn't really impact your vote tonight, but there are various factions, and I don't mean that in a bad way, in the downtown area. You have the downtown retail, you have businesses that are located downtown on the periphery, you have housing, you have businesses that are in the periphery. And so there's a lot of discussion on Thursday One of it was the 5th and Main area where you have retail that's going to be impinged with permit parking. I'm really glad to hear, and I applaud you guys for reaching out and offering some changes on that. I'm from the Turnack, Black Hills Energy, YMCA area, and there's developments going on there that you're aware of that's going to have a huge impact in parking. There's 190 people work in Turnack Tower. There's 190 capacity in Black Hills Energy, and you have the Y. So I really hope that we can discuss the nuances there. I'm for the ordinance. I believe a delay might be warranted, but I'm more concerned about taking a broad stroke and trying to paint everything downtown. I don't think that's going to work. I hope that the city will have a liaison to the Parking Advisory Committee. I heard Amanda Scott discuss that. I think it would be good because I think you're going to be surprised about some of the nuances, the differences, and the needs in the area. So I thank you. I ask you for adjustments. A lot of people were there and they were concerned about the unknown because the ordinance is out, but there's no answers, no concrete answers to things like, what about my neighborhood if the push comes from the Y and Black Hills Energy? Turnack Tower has 190. We have 73 parking spaces. There is private parking around it. It's totally utilized. So in my email, I make comments about that. I encourage you to read it if you haven't already. I'll answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And on item 70, Kyle Treloar.
Hello, Kyle Treloar with KTM Design Solutions. I'm here to speak on item number 70, an oversized request for some sanitary sewer main in the Valley Park subdivision. We've had some great discussions several weeks ago in the first Public Works Committee meeting, and then additional discussion here in the last Public Works meeting. I'm asking that City Council approve our request for approximately $110,000 for half the cost of off-site and regional sanitary sewer improvements that were installed for the Valley Drive and regional area. And I apologize, I got a bit of a cold here, so I'll get through this. Per some of the discussion that we had, we have the Valley Park subdivision, which is approximately 52 acres and encompasses an area, I'm going to run this over through here. As part of that subdivision, we installed sanitary sewer main, off-site sanitary sewer main, to connect from the existing sewer in Eglin Street, approximately right here. This first stretch of sewer was purely off-site sewer, as in other words, there was no sewer there to begin with. It doesn't front our properties. It doesn't serve the two properties on either side of it, and it also includes a bore and case for approximately $80,000. There's a second section, the green portion here, which was installed also with this project. It was oversized at 10 inches, a 10-inch main. This property, or this sewer main, serves this entire area. So we've got approximately 170 acres served by this. A couple different properties that will take service taps off of this. We're asking for that dollar amount to be recovered as an oversized cost. Now, we have had discussions with the staff, and we've worked through quite a bit, and honestly, we're just asking for similar treatment to what we've seen here, especially with some of the agreements that were even approved today for other off-site sanitary sewer. I'll be available for any questions that might come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Also on item 70, Hanny Shafi.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This item has been really going back and forth for a long time, so we would like to move it forward. And as Kyle mentioned, this their sewer line serves a large area, about 170 acres, out of which our development is, or our subdivision is 52 acres. The costs, are basically for the large diameter pipe and the offsite improvements. Similar items, I believe it's item number 24 in your agenda, in which you're approving a similar request, even for a base line which is a diameter of 8-inch instead of 10-inch. Also, there is also an item relating to a water line for oversize, which is item 27, in which there is connection fees. The city typically, pays the oversize and recovers that from the benefiting properties as they connect. And you have about 3 or so items similar to this. We were directed at one stage, after we submitted the application, to really upfront the money, by upfronting it ourselves, and then we recover it in the connection fees. And we were told at that time, or we were led to believe, that there are no funds available to do oversize. But we're looking at the agenda, and there are several items that have funding. So if the funding is available for them, then it should be. Our application, or our request, was submitted. The latest update was in November 26th, and I see there is an item in the agenda that was submitted in March, and it is being approved today. So we hope that we could reach a resolution to this and move it forward. If we calculate our request as per the city methodology that is being used in other requests, we would be in excess of $170,000, or we would have to amend our request to be a little over $170,000. But we're not going to do that, because our first calculation is what we budgeted on the project for oversize payment, which is $110,000, and we hope that you folks approve it or have an oversize agreement to reflect that, and the staff will be able to utilize that number to divide among the benefiting properties. I'll be available for any additional questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to, that brings an end to our public comment period. On to non-consent items, starting with item 63, under ordinances. First reading, 6322, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by Sperlich Consulting for Doak LLC for rezoning from medium-density residential district to low-density residential district for property described as being located north of the intersection of Cobalt Drive and Coalbank Court. Motion to approve by Solomon, second by Drury. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 64, first reading, ordinance 6323, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by Sperlich Consulting for Doak LLC for rezoning from general agricultural district to low-density residential district for property generally described as being located north of the intersection of Cobalt Drive and Misty Woods Lane. Motion to approve by Lewis, second by Drury. All in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 65, second reading, ordinance 6321, an ordinance allowing the installation of parking meters and revising the existing time zones in downtown Rapid City by amending chapter 10.44 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I think a motion to approve by Lewis and a second by, was it Laurenti? Mm-hmm. Okay. And okay. Okay, Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor, officially. I think I need to speak on this because I was the only voting no member when this was passed through committee. And having attended a number of the meetings, including the ones that were previous years, the most recent ones that really the outcome of the most recent ones had our small business interests at the table. It really brought the core and then the beyond the core, the growing core of Rapid City in conversation. It wasn't an angry meeting. It was a meeting of solutions, suggestions, ideas, great communication, wonderful questions and answers that were served, and even some resolutions that were made along the way saying, you know what, we could probably do this. This is a great way to approach this. What I feel, and I've mentioned it before, is that I really feel, although we are not hearing non-support of the new meter program, what I'm hearing is that we did actually put the cart before the horse on not getting the peripheral core into this plan and really analyzing it with additional data. And I think we have to respect the fact that we didn't have a June, July, August, which is our season of a lot of the businesses. But then we also had a lot of discussion from the Turnock Building that their season can be the winter months. So we've got a little bit of everything on this expanded core. And then Thursday night also brought some of the residents out, and there was a really good comments as well on that. So what we have to count on moving this ordinance through is that the parking committee will have an immediate assignment, because this is where the cart didn't get there first, and be able to address and explore this. But we're going to be behind the cart on this, because we should have done it ahead of time. I know we had a small body that was working from within the study side of it, but we didn't get the others to the table as we should have. And normally there would have been some kind of a task force or something that would have put more onto this table, so that when we're making this decision tonight, we're making it after all the avenues have been explored, and we wouldn't be sitting here saying, well, we'll find out once we put it in. And that's just a little bit rough direction when you've got small business in the room. You've got small business in our city. 99% of us is small business, and we've got to make sure that they're alive and well. We drive on a vibrant community and a vibrant downtown, and if we don't keep our downtown vibrant, we're going to look like we did not so long ago. And I think all of us have lived here when we saw downtown when it wasn't vibrant and when it was really hurting. We also have a lot of new competition. Once the changes were made due to the mall, and now we've got Rushmore Crossing. An even bigger threat than all of that is the internet. We didn't have that 30 years ago. We didn't even have that 15 years ago, and now we do. And that is free shopping, or at least we're drawn to think that. So we need to take in consideration the wonderful comments, the statements, the written dialogue that's come through. This motion, for some reason, needs to be going through in order to make everything happen, and I just wonder on that. I don't understand why we couldn't have implemented what we were all in agreement of, which was to bring the new meter system in and then start working off of that. We may be shuffling our shuffle problem just around the corner, just around the block, and I hope that we're going to be ready for that, and we can make these changes that we've been told can happen fairly quickly. I also would recommend all of these people that have put in so many hours and so much great conversation to the staff and also to the council to be considered as being put on that commission, because they're well informed now. They're coming to the table now with a lot of research and a lot of data, and they can really kick this off quite quickly. So I hope we will consider that as well as we're looking at who's going to come on board. So if the cart before the horse is the right way for the city to act, then that's what it is. But personally, I like riding horses more than driving a cart. Thanks.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just to approve the installation of the mayor's, when we spend $700,000 in these meters, is that right? Is that correct about that? So we've already bought the meters and we have the contract in place, I assume?
Yes.
So we're just approving, otherwise we were wasting even more money if we don't actually install them. So I guess that's the nature of my motion anyway, is to make sure we actually go forth with the purchase. We've already, we've done this. This isn't the actual changes in the ordinance, it's just installing the meters. So just remind everybody of that before we start getting into too much of a conversation at this point.
Okay. Any other speakers on this item? Okay, we have a motion for approval on the floor. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries with 2 noes. Modrick, Solomon, correct? Okay. Sorry? 3 noes. Okay, 3 noes. Is there any more noes? Okay, Roberts is also a no vote then. Okay, moving on. Item 66. Second reading, Ordinance 6324, an ordinance updating and revising the general parking regulations of the City of Rapid City by amending Chapter 10.40 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Laurenti and a second by Drew. Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before we leave this discussion, we've been having this discussion for quite some time, and there's some acknowledgments we need to have. First of all, I very much appreciate the staff and all the hard work they've done. The actual essence of this plan of getting smart meters, which I think we're all for, leveling up our meters and moving forward, and then putting those in the premium spots, that I'm okay with. That's a change that we have to adjust to, but I'm okay with that. My challenge has been the other parts of it, and the nuance of each block is just so different. And it just felt like it wasn't quite there yet, even though there's been opportunity, and this is not against staff, they've provided opportunity for input, but sometimes until it's in the awareness, that's when everybody's realizing what it means for them. And so that's been my hesitation, is I want to approve this, but if I have question marks, which I've asked the questions, and last time I presented some thoughts on the policy, which we will not be able to address policy as council as a result of the ordinance. But I just can't put my stamp of approval on it because I'm concerned about the unintended consequences. I believe the intended purpose is good, and we're trying to find solutions. I think the permitting thing has hope, but the problem is it's too clunky for me to say, yes, this is right on, and maybe it never will be, maybe it will be, but it's a challenge for me. That's why I have a hard time supporting that portion of it. And I'll just say this, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that in a year or two, this parking plan is a tremendous success, and I'll be the first one to say my reservations about it were wrong, and I'll admit it. And I'm sure, and I hope it is a success. But we need to figure this out. I feel like there needs to be more conversation. I thought Mr. Small had a great suggestion on delaying it to allow for some study through the summer months to figure out how the permitting and whether the 3-hour, 2-hour, some of those things, how that works through the summer and the shoulder season too. I mean, there's when you're talking summer, you're talking summer and shoulder, which is the months surrounding that. So that's my reservation. I think everybody's coming at it with good intentions, which is good. But I'm listening to these small business owners who put their lives on the line. It's ironic it's Small Business Week. And I don't want this to have a negative impact on our small businesses, our professional services, or our housing downtown. And it's hard to make all parties happy. But I think we still have some work to do. And again, it's hard for me to put my stamp of approval when I just don't feel like we're there yet. So with that, I'll yield. Thank you.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just guess very often you don't hear us say we were wrong up here, but I was wrong when I originally came up with the 3 hours and $10 fine. Obviously, I made a mistake there because we're here again and it didn't work out. So I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. But as I look down the dais here, I see a realtor, a finance man, I'm not sure, IT, fundraiser. I mean, I see a lot of different professions. We're all experts in different parts of the community, and I'm a builder, whatever, realtor. I feel I can speak on those items pretty intelligently, and I can ask them for input on things that I just mentioned. But what I don't see is any parking experts up here, and I don't see anybody that really truly knows parking or can say that they know parking. And so we went outside and we found someone who's not involved in this community who's actually is an expert. And they've come up with these recommendations. And because what I hear a lot of is a lot of opinions. And I'm glad that Mr. Peterson said speculating, because that's what we're doing. We are speculating. It's like day traders. I think, I feel. Well, I understand that. And everybody it's an emotional subject because you're worried about your businesses. And obviously, I worry about business as much as anybody. I think I've done a good job protecting and promoting business in this town. But I will say that we have us involved up here. It doesn't work for this particular item. Just because I think that, like I said, none of us are experts up here. We don't know how to, I don't know anything about parking other than I try to do it the best I can. We have boards that run the airport. We have boards that run the Civic Center. And those are all ultimately answerable. They have to answer to the city council, but at this point, they run autonomously, basically. And that's what this board is going to do, I assume. Mostly it's going to be, input from good people in the community that are involved, stakeholders. And I know the mayor's done a good job, and every mayor, for that matter, has done a good job of appointing people to those committees and those boards that have stake, something at stake. And I urge, obviously, I would like to see Mr. Small on there, Mr. Peterson, maybe a few other people that have been very vocal to be part of that board, because they could have their input directly right there where it matters more than probably talking to us and trying to influence us when we're trying to worry about getting elected tomorrow or whatever. I don't understand. I completely appreciate that, need for us to feel like we have to fix things. That's our job up here, is to try to reach out in the community and make everybody happy. Well, we can't. And there's no way to run this fairly that anybody's going to be happy. I think the best way to do it is the way that this board is going to be out there, and they're going to be able to address your grievances a lot quicker than we can, with a lot less, emotion and prejudice and everything else. It really will work out better, I think. And people worry about the city council being taken out of it. Well, you have a First Amendment out there, folks, that guarantees your right to always address your government for any problems you have. So I think that we will never be taken out of this. It's too small a town. You can always come and talk to one of us or get something back on the agenda. We can change it if it's not working. But I think, and I don't want to, kill business downtown. I don't think anybody does. But there's got to be something other than us, because we're just not equipped to do this job. I fully believe that. We've had a lot of input over this subject for a long time. And I think now it's time to move forward. We've spent the money on the various items, and the experts have been there, and they don't live here. They just are looking at it. I understand Mr. Small does have a valid point about some of the things, but about the time period, but I still think that hopefully it's not going to be as bad as we think it is. But once again, I'm using an opinion. I'm using the word hope. I don't know for sure. But we're going to have a board out there that's going to be somewhat in control of this, and they're getting a lot of input, and I really would urge all of you to volunteer for that board, because I think you'd be the most effectual at it. You know way more about it than I do. I don't have a business downtown, so that's all I have to say.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is a difficult, interesting subject that any of us that have been on the council for a long time, we have seen what's happened and the issues that we've had with parking downtown. People like myself that have lived here for my entire life have seen what downtown has gone through over the decades, how it's declined, came back, declined a little bit at times, came back. One of the things that really worries me about this, there's a few things that worry me about this. I do know that, we do need to make some changes. We've known that for a long time. We need to make things fair for everybody. How do you do that when every business downtown is different? And, one of the things that worries me is if this board isn't proactive and quick enough, if there is an issue, that can be extremely difficult, especially with a retail business. One bad month can mean death to a retail business. So, I think that when we're looking at this, if we're jumping into this, with both feet, we really have to look at our retail downtown and what it's doing to them and how it's affecting them. Because one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to push more retail out of downtown. And, through this whole process, I was very happy with all the people called, text, with their opinions, the things that they're worried about. And also the people that I talked to that said with the way parking was now, that's part of the reason they moved to Rushmore Crossing, or they moved to the west side of town, or they moved. So this is an issue, and it always has been. Everybody up here knows that. Like I said, my big concern is us not being proactive enough to keep ahead of this, or at least keep up with it. Because, as a business person myself, 1-2 bad months, that could be the end of my business. So anyway, I agree with Mr. Small. I think we really should get through the summer months to get that data, because it is so much different in Rapid City between the winter months and the summer months. When you have millions of people coming through Rapid City over a 3-month period, how does that affect your downtown parking? Immensely, immensely. So, you know, and I worry about the peripheral businesses. I worry about the businesses out there right now that have, and I would like to ask Sarah a question if she would come up, if that'd be all right. Because one of the many, many questions that I was asked was on the permitting for the residents downtown and for the employees. Have we figured out how many we're going to hand out yet? Because that was how many of the parking passes there are going to be?
We don't have a predetermined amount for each block, but we are going to look at it on a block-by-block basis depending on what the demand is. The primary function of on-street parking is for customers and visitors. To the extent that the city can have more efficient use of on-street areas that are underutilized, we want to be able to do that, but not at the expense of visitors and customers.
And you know, one of the things with that is without having data during the summer months, what do we really know as far as, you know, how much parking we need in front of some of these businesses downtown, some of the businesses, you know, peripheral businesses. You know, another question that was brought up was, you know, Saturday's probably the busiest day downtown. You know, if we really want to be friendly, business friendly, why not free parking on Saturdays? You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that I think that need to be changed. I think there's, like I said, I just can't overemphasize, we've got to be ahead of this thing if it's going to be done. And, you know, if you're not proactive enough, we're going to see retail business hurt, and hopefully not hurt too much that they go out of business or move out of the downtown. So anyway, with that, I will say I'm not going to vote for this right now. I'd like to see us move it off for a couple of months to get some of that data. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments. I did serve on 2 parking committees in the 90s and the 2000s, and we did not do a good job. You know, we tried to listen to everybody, and we tried to make it fair, and still didn't do a good job. So bringing in somebody from outside of town is really the way to do this. We need experts. I'm not an expert, but yet I was on the committee. And when we look at this parking plan, what we're going to do is actually free up some spaces in front of businesses because employees won't be parking there. So in a couple months, and I heard one of our wise leaders say this, that you might go downtown in July and see a few parking places that are open. You'll go, oh my gosh, they did it. They ruined our retail. No, that's where the tourists are going to park. That's where the customers are going to park. That's where they're going to be able to park in front of those businesses and spend money downtown. So let's move the employees out of there so people that can spend money can get those places in front of those businesses. It's not going to be, I don't think, detrimental to business. I think it'll be helpful to business. And if we go ahead and do it this summer, I think of that as a stress test. Okay? We're going to see what works and what doesn't this summer. And you know, tourists that come in are not offended by paying for parking. When I go to a city, I expect to pay for it. And if I can get a good place, I'm going to pay $1 easily and go, yeah, bonus. And if I'm in meetings and I can just go to my app and put in another hour and not get a ticket, that, to me, is worth the cost of admission, folks. So I really want to see this go forward, and I want to see it go forward now, because I think it should be in place for summer, and I think the businesses will see the benefits from it. Thank you.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple comments, and then I have a question for Sarah, if she would stand at the ready. You know, this council approved the City Civic Center vote a couple months ago, but we're not micromanaging how the Civic Center is being built. We're letting the experts do it. And that's one of the things I think we kind of like to do. We like to have our fingers into everything so we can be accountable to people, and we're not letting the experts do it. So I would just request that we voted to buy these meters. We voted to do the meetings. We knew all about this. This has been going on since 2016. It's not a surprise. There have been other data from years ago, so it's not a surprise. So I would just think we would let the experts do this. And what better way to get a data than to implement it now? Then we also have the board that will be able to respond quicker than this council can. Because if we're going to respond, we've got to take it through legal and finance, and then we've got to come, we've got to have several meetings to make any changes. Whereas if we have our board that we trust and they are working, they can make immediate changes to whatever's going on downtown. And those spots downtown in the summer months, those should be for our visitors and for the people that are going into the businesses, the locals and the tourists. Sarah, can you just, about the summer data, do you have any comments about that? How that should proceed or could proceed?
Sure, yeah, a quick comment about the data. It's not perfect data. We operate on, it's good data that's responding to well-documented problems. But at the same time, if we wait a few months, we're going to be collecting data on a totally different management paradigm. So that's not going to be perfect data either.
So we'd be comparing different types of data?
Yes.
Because we have different types of meters in and people parking differently.
Yep.
So it's not even going to be comparable?
Yep, and I would also add, it seems like the question about the data, the average length of stay, people are going to be able to stay downtown as long as they want to. We're not encouraging people to leave downtown any sooner. We're encouraging turnover so that if you opt to park in a 2-hour zone in order to avoid paying a meter, you can stay downtown longer than 2 hours. You're just going to have to turn over that spot and relinquish it to someone else who can be a visitor to that business that you're parked in front of.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. I yield.
Okay. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Since most of the businesses that are downtown are in Ward 2, I thought it appropriate that I get a chance to speak on this. So thank you for the input from all of the business owners, and I just don't mean the people that were attended on Thursday night for that meeting and those other public meetings that you folks have attended that are in the audience of raising major concerns. I was also hearing from other businesses as well prior to these meetings, and their largest concern was employees parking in front of businesses, in front of other businesses, and then creating a shuffle. The 2-hour or 3-hour shuffle is what we call it here. And so those are the majority of people that I was hearing from, is that the employees, the owners of those other businesses that I heard from were making major concerns or major complaints about all the employees parking in front of those businesses. And then as far as the boundaries that are getting set up, we have to start someplace, and we're not going to, it reminds me of the NCAA tournaments and people getting into those tournaments, and some are on the bubble and some don't make it into the process, so I wish they could. And it's a starting point. It's only a starting point. And in my mind, the task force is going to be able to address that much quicker than we can here on the council. And I'm sorry I'm repeating this, but it comes down to these folks that I've been working with for at least 8 years now, and I trust them quite well. So everything that they've said to me has been verifiable. I trust their data that they've been giving to me and sharing with me. And then the predetermined parking permits, I caution against using that predetermined number because we don't know what the number is going to be. And if we do something very similar to what we did on East San Francis Street, putting a cap on it and then saying, no, that's not going to work either, we don't want to be in that same situation of putting a cap on the number of parking permits. So let the staff do their job and let the task force do their job, because that's the ones that I'm really hearing from a lot. And if I can ask Lieutenant Bach to come forward for, okay. Lieutenant, there's several questions that are coming up for me, but I'm limited on time. But is there something that I'm missing or forgetting on? Because you did a lot of walking through all of the downtown to address some of these concerns that we've been talking about. And I know you've interacted and interfaced with a lot of the folks and businesses downtown. So is there something I'm missing that should be addressed here that we're not getting across? Because one of the things that stuck out in my mind is that LRC, or I forget the abbreviation, but the license recognition program that you have, LRP.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah,
go.
license plate recognition. And what was the question in reference to that software?
Yes, that is important data. And we got a chance to hear Jim Gilbert talk a little bit about that. And since he's not here, can you help us out?
I think he's around the corner.
Oh, there he is.
But
can you, since I've got you at this podium and I've got limited amount of time, can you start us off with understanding how that works? Because I think that's critical data coming forward. So get us started on that.
I won't speak on the specific data, but I can explain where that software came from. It came out of the pilot program we did with the meter company. And the meter company partners with a license plate reading software company, and we purchased that specifically, well, mainly to do electronic chalking and be more efficient with our electronic chalking and not have to walk and chalk stick every tire. And so there was some criticism about the Walker study and only being in town for one day and taking collection of data for one day. And so Mr. Gilbert was able to extract some data that we have in that software from October to current. But as Sarah spoke on that, like that does tell us a little bit of the turnover that happens in Rapid City and what the common plates are in Rapid City. So we can make some assumptions that those are probably residents and employees in the downtown district. It does not tell us what's going to happen when we put meters in the core and make the peripheral 2 hours, because the problem is now the core is free. So if we wait another 4 months to collect data, we're not going to know where those people are going. We're not going to know what's going to happen because we don't have the meters in the core to know where that shifts the employees. And to wait a little bit, like some suggestions are made, like to put the meters in and just let it happen. We don't have sufficient occupancy, and Pauline can probably speak on that on the permit program, the lease lot permit program we have right now. She has a waiting list. So if you call today to get in a lot for a permit, she doesn't have a space for you. So you get on a waiting list. Some of those waiting lists are 7 years long. So the permit program is to get places for these employees to park in the meantime, and I think it's been spoken on in a lot of public areas, until maybe we have enough need for a parking structure. But Walker told us we don't need a parking structure today. We have, like Sarah said, underutilized spaces on street parking currently.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this brief because I've spoke, in my opinion, too much on this particular item because I think it's been done really well. But I'll say just three things. The first one is a question just for all of us to think about, including the people on this dais. Is the current parking working really well? Just think about that. For some, they could probably shake their head yes. For some business owners, they're probably going, no, it doesn't work for me at all. In fact, this change is going to help me. Like the periphery thing, if we moved it another block, we would make those happy that weren't in that periphery now, not in it when they were, and the next block of people on the periphery would be upset. So this is what we deal with, and this is why we need experts to give us a very good plan, which is what we have. It's been in the works and being studied for many, many months. This is not putting the cart before the horse, because this future management plan will be based on data. It will react based on the data. It will not react based on who yells the loudest. It will react based on demand. It will react based on where people park. That's what will change parking in the downtown. And that absolutely will make parking better. The data outside of those months, and this is coming from a statistical standpoint, I work in that field in finance, but I've been trained in statistics as a Six Sigma black belt. Data not collected in what you might call special cause data, which might be the summer months. We don't even know that the summer months are special cause data. When you look at the distribution of data, a bell curve, parking's much like that. It starts out low, here's your summer months, and then after the summer. So the data we collect around our peak months, that doesn't mean you throw it out. It can be very representative of what we need to make changes with. It can be very representative of the data. It will be higher during the summer months, but that doesn't mean the data that surrounds the summer isn't extremely representative of the things that we will experience based on the mixture of the parking that we need in different zones downtown. And the last part that I'll say is that when changes need to be made, and it's been said, this parking board will be able to react because it will have people who are vested in it directly, because it will have some business owners, it will have people who like to come down and shop. I assume there'll be one or two people, but my guess is that it will be mostly people who are very vested in making sure that this parking works. But it will work because it will be able to react quicker, and it will be based on data. It will not be based on people who complain the most. That's why we're in the boat we're in today. So I'm going to finish by saying, is the current parking working well? Some will say yes, some will say no. This will make it better long term, and that's what we're trying to do. I yield.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm just going to follow up on Thursday night's meeting. A lot of the downtown business owners were there, as well as some residents in the historic district and the surrounding peripheral areas. So the only comments I want to make that I am going to try not to repeat, and I don't think I heard anybody up here say this, but once these ordinances are passed tonight, really starts our new process. We currently have time-limited spots. We also currently have metered spots. What we have currently are meters that you put coins in. They don't give us any data. They don't tell us how long someone's been there. They don't tell us what the turnover was. They don't give us any type of information. When we put in the new meters, that's really going to start our new data gathering, because at that point, Kathy has already let me know, because I was talking to her after the meeting Thursday night, that, to start with, we're trying to keep the parking management kind of like the same as it is today. So when these new meters go in, they're still open, so if someone wants to pay for the whole day of parking for that one day that they want to be downtown, they can literally park there, and as long as they feed the money, they're paying for the convenience of that slot. Once we get a good handle and we want that turnover, and we want to try to get that turnover for the retail businesses, these meters can then be pre-programmed to only allow people to be there for 2 hours or for 4 hours, and then they're going to make them move. So we can actually look at that for the different style of businesses that are downtown. So I promised I was going to keep this short. I'm not going to go over my time. I just really encourage, and I was very encouraged, and I still want to encourage the business owners to continue in here, because what I heard Sarah say to a lot of your concerns, take her card, call her. We are going to set up this committee, but Sarah is there to listen to you. And the biggest advantage I see to putting in this new parking plan is that we can literally look at each block as its own individual environment, so that we can choose where we need to put those meters in order to get that turnover, and where we can put in the time slots. And then even when we get built out 4 meters all over the place, that's what I envision, eventually having meters, we can pre-program those meters that some of them will allow someone to be there all day, and some of them will make people turn over. So thank you to the community, and especially to the downtown business people and residents downtown and everybody who spends a lot of time downtown. I think this is really a new birth to our parking plan, and I think it's going to take your input to actually make this work. So I encourage you to step up. And yes, I did state that we had already been talking to the mayor and amongst the city council leadership. We will have a city council liaison, non-voting, on that committee like we do a lot of our other committees, so that we can bring that information back and make sure that you do have city council ears on this downtown parking. So thank you. I think I left 2 minutes, Mayor. I yield.
Jason Solomon for a short.
What's my time? No, I only took a couple minutes. Actually, I just wanted to say One thing that makes me feel good about this whole thing is the fact that we have such awesome people in Sarah Hansel and Lieutenant Bach. I know they'll be strategic and caring, and we'll listen and work together. So even though I have some concerns about some aspects of this, again, I'm for the new meters. I think it's going to be awesome. But it does make me feel good knowing we have good staff members who are willing to listen and work together. And so if this is truly the beginning of this process, like President Scott mentioned, which I agree with, then I am excited about the fact that they're going to continue to work together and kind of figure it out. And there's going to be some tweaks and adjustments made along the way, but I am grateful that we have really good people. That's the best part of this. Even though policy-wise I might be like, ugh, the people, they're rock solid. So with that, I yield.
The motion on the floor is for approval, and we'll go to a roll call, please.
Scott? Drew? Nordstrom? Modrick? Solomon? Lewis? Laurenti? Drury? Roberts? Motion passes 6-3.
Okay, thank you. Now on to item 67, first reading, ordinance number 6327, an ordinance regarding supplemental appropriation number 3 for 2019.
Move to approve.
Motion approved by Drury, second by Laurenti. All in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 68, first reading ordinance 6325, an ordinance to amend section 9.28.030 and repeal section 9.28.040 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to firearms. Motion to approve by Solomon, second by Lewis. We'll go to Steve Laurenti.
Sorry, Mayor. It was kind of like a seal there. I was waiting for a fish. My brain just, I heard firearms, I was like, firearms! How are you this evening? Thank you for being here. So I saw you out there. This is the only reason I'm asking a question. No, it's not the reason I'm asking a question. So what I mentioned at Legal and Finance was, can you, if it's really extensive, say so, but I don't think that it is. Can you kind of give a brief on what are the situations where we still prohibit firearms as a city?
So I looked into not just where we might prohibit, but just anything to do with any ordinances that have to do with the possession of firearms or ammunition or something like that. So I'll give you that history, and I'll also first, just to fill everyone in on why the question was asked, I'm guessing, the South Dakota legislature passed 2019 House Bill 1056, and that kind of beefs up one of the statutes that they already have that deals with municipalities' ability to regulate the possession of firearms and ammunition and different things like that. And in that, it actually also contains an exception and says that that statute does not apply to any generally applicable zoning ordinance, building regulation, or fire code, so long as the ordinance, regulation, or code isn't used to circumvent the statute. So where I'm going to start is with the zoning ordinances that we have. So for instance, we have regulations about where a gun shop can go, where a gun manufacturer could be located. That's in Title 17 for zoning. There are also some building regulations that have to do with, some of them might be in and out of the fire code as well, or reference the fire code, and so there are things like if you can have an explosive device that's going to detonate in a certain area, you can, or you have to have certain protections. Maybe it has to be in a building where it's not connected to other buildings. So
I'm going to stop you. This is a planned type detonation for whatever reason?
Well, no, just if you're manufacturing ammunition and you have it in a certain quantity, then in order to protect protect other buildings, you have to keep it in a building that's separate from maybe the main.
Storing
Yeah, it's storing.
type of rig. Okay, very
Yep,
good.
storing
Continue.
and manufacturing.
Go ahead.
Yep, thank you. And then, so those are building and fire code regulations. And then another thing is, when this bill was brought up to the legislature, the Municipal League actually got some feedback from the legislators about it, and they said that this bill would not, it would not affect a municipality's ability to trace and recover stolen items such as firearms, and local law enforcement would still be able to enforce any sort of state or federal regulations on that. So we do have some regulations like that, something like the pawnbroker ordinance that we have, that has to deal with somebody bringing in a firearm, selling it to the pawnbroker. They have to keep it for a certain number of days, and so law enforcement will still be able to do that, but we do have ordinances that deal with things like pawnbrokers. So that's another one. And then we do have some ordinances. One is states, basically if the state requires a security agent to have a permit to carry a firearm, then the security agent has to have that permit. And then 8.04080, that's having to do with dangerous materials and objects that are in family daycares. So we do have some regulations on those, which those are, it's good to have those. And then we have ordinances on discharging firearms within the city. So that's not just possession, that's something like the actual discharge. So, and then the final one was you cannot aim or discharge a weapon at a bird, wild creatures, or other animals within a park. So that should be it. That's the list.
Not even in self-defense. What if it's I mean, a robin, they get pretty aggressive during the mating season. I don't know.
In the movie The Birds, maybe.
Okay, no, I appreciate all of that. I do. I just wanted to make sure that we were, I mean, I knew we were, but I just wanted to see if there were anything that was related to, you know, the Second Amendment type thing, which is kind of what the state, you know, that's the route they were going with that, you know, so that we weren't impinging on Second Amendment type of thing. So I just wanted to know what limitations there were, and if any of those were related to that. So I appreciate your input.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
May I do a couple follow-ups with Ms. Grote, please?
Yes.
Kinsley, am I hearing you say this correctly, that, and please correct me, is that we've got several ordinance changes coming in the near future?
So this is the main one on firearms.
Yes.
So are there other ones coming? No, not on firearms at this point in time.
Yeah, so we're not having to make adjustments to those other ordinances that would have been referred to. I just want to make sure the public is aware of that as well. I guess this is not a warm fuzzy for me. And what I mean by that, there's a whole list of things that I don't want to get into at this point, but I'm going to approve this. I'm okay with this, but it's not one of those warm fuzzies we can get attached to, because there's a variety of, a whole host of issues that come up because of, I'm reminded of other issues that the state came up with that we had to, as a city, came down with. And for me, this kind of fits in that same category. I'm sorry to be vague on it, but I just don't want to be misconstrued that I'm against firearms or anything of that, or the misunderstanding of the Second Amendment and everything else. But there's a whole host of other issues that come along with this. But again, it's just reaching a comfort level for me. Thank you.
Do we have a motion on this? Do we have a motion on this? Okay, we have a motion then. Okay, we have a motion then, according to these people. We have a motion for approval on item 68. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 69, first reading, ordinance 6328, an ordinance amending section 5.12.080 and adding section 12.20.110 of the Rapid City Municipal Code regarding the consumption, mixing, or possession of alcoholic beverage in public places.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion to approve by Scott, second by Drury. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 70 for Public Works, and we'll go to the Public Works Chair, Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 70, request by KTM Design Solutions on behalf of Yasmin Dream LLC for reimbursement for repayment of 1/2 of construction costs for sanitary sewer improvements for North Valley Park in the amount of $110,445.05. And I'd like to make a motion on this. I move to approve the request by KTM Design Solutions for the oversize, and with the city paying with the amount of $110,445.05. Okay. Yep. Okay.
Can you clarify the motion?
My motion is to approve the request by KTM Design for the oversized cost. The city will pick it up.
What's your point of order?
Thank you. My point of order is that I'm trying not to confuse terms here, but I believe, and I would look to the city attorney, there is a difference between oversize agreement and construction costs. The item on the agenda is referring to an agreement that we discussed at Public Works, in which our Public Works Mr. Deltak and the staff had agreed with Mr. Henny Shaffey on this, which is on our agenda, which is construction costs. So, Mayor, my point of order is, I think we need, the recommendation at Public Works was to have this sent to this council, and depending on if this council wanted to take a look at oversize, was to send it back to staff and Mr. Haney to look at something, and I turned to the city attorney to get his opinion because he was at Public Works.
Hey, Joel Landine.
Well, I think you can authorize payment of the construction costs or oversize. I mean, I think there is a disagreement clearly between staff and Mr. Shaffey whether or not this is actually an oversized cost. The one concern I would have is if you are directing us to pay this amount, is what's the funding source for it?
But is there, I guess, Joel, what I'm asking you, am I incorrect in my assumption that there's a difference between an oversize agreement and setting up contractors' construction costs?
Well, I think what the discussion was that staff would support or would not object to, although I would say Public Works staff, not necessarily finance staff, was a construction fee agreement. So generally, when you have an oversized situation, the city pays the oversized portion of the cost, okay? In other situations where we've extended, or where a developer has extended a line which was not oversized, but where other people could hook up and benefit from it, is we have established a construction fee, and that is done through an agreement. If you were going to go a construction fee, which we would then collect and disperse to the developer who extended the line, then yes, we would need to draft an agreement. But I believe the motion is for the city to just pay the $110,000 and not recoup it.
That is my intent.
So my point of order, Joel, is can that motion be made with this item on the agenda?
Yes.
Because there was a question concerning that at Public Works.
The item on the agenda is a request for reimbursement for repayment of 1/2 of the construction cost for the sanitary sewer improvements in the amount of $110,040. So that seems to be exactly what the request was.
Okay, thank you.
So is my motion acceptable then? Is that?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
And you got a second, right?
Yes, I did. And as I was speaking, I'd like to retain the floor because I'd like to make a few points about how I feel about this. When we had the discussion at Public Works on last Tuesday, this project has been waiting long enough. It's been in the planning stages. These guys are ready to go with this construction, and I want to support that. We are looking at a shortage of housing just as we are right now. And we've got the B-21s coming in. People are ready to give, to diss our community, I don't know how else to say it, when it comes to this B-21 project. They are going to say we don't have the housing, and we don't. They're going to say we don't have the schools. We have a problem there. They're going to say that we don't have the workforce ready for this project. And I don't want them to check all three boxes. You know, we have this approved, and we've got to get ready for it. And the way we're going to get ready for it is to build some houses and get some skill sets in here for building. And so I think that Hanny and Kyle have waited long enough, and that we should go ahead with a yes on this. And as far as a funding source, I would direct the staff to find some funding source for it, because as they proved in other situations, we can find money. We saw that happen at Vision, you know. So I would direct the staff to find the supplement for this particular project. I want it to go forward. I don't want to wait any longer. We've got to get these projects going. We've got other developers that are waiting too. They've got their papers are languishing on desks in our planning department, and I want to see these go through. I made this clear last time. And if it's going to take this from us, if it's going to take some money, then that's what we have to do, because it's time to get these projects going. I don't want to see them delayed any longer. Thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and if I would, I'd like to ask a question of Public Works, if I may, please.
Please.
Mr. Tech, if you could speak broadly about what we've already heard, and then what I'd also like to hear is, because item 24 was a question I had on, because I know there's some oversized costs that we're participating in there with the development. So what I'm trying to, and you can explain that as well, what the difference is between, say, item 24, which we've already approved, and an item such as this, if you would, please.
Actually, I'm going to refer to item number 28 because it
Very
most
good.
closely resembles this exact situation that we're speaking about.
Very good.
Item 28 is a oversized construction fee resolution. There was an individual that owned property on Krebs Drive. The individual wanted water to the property. The individual came to the city and said, I want to install water to my property. The city looked at our master plan and said, yep, Krebs Drive is a future location for a certain diameter size water main. You are responsible for the base cost. That individual installed a water main along Krebs Drive past 3 properties to get to his own property, and the city only paid the increment from the base size to the oversize. So what Mr. Chaffee is requesting is well beyond the common practice that this city has had for the last 15 years. So what you're proposing is way out of the ordinary, and as far as who's paying for it, it is the water or wastewater utility customers of the city. 2 years ago, we went through a utility rate study, and there was much discussion at this dais about keeping costs down. If we go supplementing every single construction project, that means every ratepayer in the city is paying for these costs.
So one more question, because you brought it up. Is there a difference in the base size needed for this development in item 70? I mean, is he having to do something different based on the base size of the?
Once again, the city's utility master plan did not require oversizing in this instance. Mr. Chaffee's engineer did an analysis of the basin, which are properties that he controls. He's saying it's not part of this development, but it'll be a future one, and this 10-inch size is what is needed to provide service to those residential properties that'll be future phases.
Very good. And I agree with you, and I think that is something council needs to think about. And to say that this development won't happen if we don't pay for something we wouldn't normally pay based on a 15-year policy, I think is unfair to all of the other people who have had to upfront those costs whenever they've requested the same type of thing that he just made an example of in item 28. So please don't make the case that this development won't happen if we don't approve that. I think we all know better than that. I think that's unfair to even say. I yield.
Chad Lewis.
Maybe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask a question of Pauline Sumption, please?
Yes.
Ms. Sumption, question for, well, maybe this may be a legal question too. I don't know. If we go forward and approve this without a funding source, then when we have to and direct the staff to find a funding source, when we have to come back and approve it again because we haven't identified a funding source?
More than likely, if you want staff to find a funding source, it'll have to be continued so they are able to do so.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
I know Mr. Tech said that it had to come from water or whatever utility that this project is part of, and I apologize for not knowing that specifically. But I'm assuming that they already have a master plan and all that funding has been allocated out. Assumption on my part, but I know that they had also worked on a master plan. This is no different than that bid item earlier where we had to correct the funding sources before you guys approved awarding of the bid. It's the same scenario. We have to have the funding source as part of the motion, or it needs to be continued until we have one.
Okay, I guess that was my point. I just seemed kind of, I don't recall doing that before, so I just want to make sure that we're doing it the right way, and thank you. I yield.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I ask a question of our city, our Dale Tech?
Please.
Dale, you said that the city had showed in their master plan that this was just going to be an 8-inch line, but you have seen for a couple of years, oh, you're shaking your head. Am I wrong with that?
The city master plan does not show any sizing in this location, which means it's up to the developer in the area to determine the size that is needed for their development.
Okay, well, I guess that's where my question comes from, because in the design criteria manual, 8-inch is base for sewer?
No, 8-inch is a minimum size that the city requires, and that says that is in our standard specification and does not say anywhere in the ordinance or our criteria what a base size is.
Then how do you...
It is dependent upon what is needed to serve the development. And I have a report produced by Mr. Shaffey's engineer that identifies it being a 10-inch sewer that's required for this development in the service area that he is proposing.
Then I guess I'm a little confused, because I was looking at item 24 too, and that was a sewer line. That was an 8-inch sewer line going across there. The city just paid for all of that. There was no base. And I guess that's just a little bit different than I've noticed before. Because typically with a developer, I thought if you were going across the property, you had to go to the other end for that connection.
That's if you're working in public right-of-way. Item 28 is a mango compared to the apple that we're speaking about. They're completely different issues. They're not even comparable. If you want to talk about item 28, item 20, no.
I was talking about 24,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Item 24, if you want to speak about that, Black Hills Power has agreed to extend roughly 2,000 feet, which is about 1,000 of it is off-site. They've obtained easements for 4 different private property owners to even get to their property. That's the base size that they're paying for. And then the city has chosen to participate to extend it in an easement, which Black Hills Power provided to the city further north, because there is no corridors in public right-of-way to provide this sewer. It's got to go across private property. Completely different issues.
Okay, absolutely. One of the things, can I speak, Kyle, can I talk to you real quick on this? Mr. Talor. You know, I remember this coming across, I don't know, what was it, a year ago when you were bringing the sewer across the property itself and not through Creek Drive, and there was going to be a tremendous amount of money savings on your side. And also, was that an 8-inch line at that time if you were serving just your development?
We were, with that proposal, we were still asking for a 10-inch main, but you're absolutely right. Our Our request was to run the sewer through the property so that we could take full benefit of it, versus...
Because I remember your costs were quite a bit lower.
Significantly lower. And so by moving it into the right-of-way, the cost of the entire project jumped up significantly.
And you weren't servicing any other off-site people at that point, too. You could have if you'd have went across your...
We were still allowing for those
Oh, you were,
off-sites.
because of the manhole in
Correct.
Creek Drive.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. But you didn't have to go under the railroad track down there. You didn't have to go on Creek Drive. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I was just thinking about that one and the cost on that one, and I was hoping that maybe the council could remember that, too, because, you know, there was a significant amount of money they could have saved going across their property instead of coming up Creek Drive to service the other properties that they're going to be servicing with this line. So, anyway, thank you.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Hanny a question?
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you, Hanny, for coming up. I know you've got some information probably you'd love to share as well, and I think that Councilman Roberts led nicely into this portion of it, because it's been one of the parts, as I've been looking on the history of this, that I've been looking at in supportive of this project, because it does go beyond your acreage and is prepared to service for the future, which is tomorrow. It's happening fast. So if you could, Hanny, maybe do some clarification for us here on this side.
One of the items that, you know, like I think that were mentioned in the discussions, a couple of things. One is like that the city has a 15-year policy that says we pay this or we pay that. That policy apparently is conflicted with even on your agenda. You know, item number 26 is basically the authorize the mayor for elite homes for storm sewer pond, which is fine. The other one, which is for 5th Street, which is number 27, is to pay for oversize for a water line and to in-state connection fees for the money that the city paid for an oversize. The claim by Mr. Tech that is, I control all of this property that is in yellow. I don't control this whole property that is in yellow. It's 170 acres. To the left is the property that is owned by Ace Salvage. To the south is Johnson property. And at the rate we're going, maybe I will never exercise the option to buy it, because I think it is very hard to deal with you folks. The other one is the Black Hills Power and Light. We're paying for an 8-inch sewer line because it is extended across somebody else's property. We are benefiting property owners that are outside our subdivision. The ordinance 60, chapter 16-16-100-A states that the city council may and state, you know, pay oversized costs for subdivisions like this, for oversized costs for items like this. And you're doing it in your agenda in about 4 or 5 different times. Orville Davis on item number 27, I guess he's got a better attorney than I do. That's why we paid him the oversize, and we are now trying to recover the cost that we paid him from property that he fully serviced Lazy P6 property. The entire water line serves only his property, and we paid him, and we did not say a single thing. But your public works director states that. This project has been a nightmare from day one, folks. You know, just to give you an idea. We tried to do the right thing, to put in the right road for Valley Drive as a continuous road, and we worked with Menard, and they elected not to do it. And the city allowed them to vacate the right-of-way, since that is a big map, allowed them to vacate the right-of-way, and they were supposed to pay for part of the sewer line, and we allowed them to sell that property to a bank, and we never required them to extend the sewer to plat that property. Even though we're platting at the same time, they were not required to do a single thing. But no, your public works director chooses to ask of certain people certain things and others no. You know, this is basically crazy, folks. This is completely against our Constitution, to be selective application of rules and regulations. You know, Power and Light is doing the same exact thing. We requested to extend the sewer along our property to save money, save the taxpayers, and still service the same exact service area. And we were told no, even though we said it will save the taxpayers a lot of money and saves us a lot of money. You know, we do a lot of things in the community, and unfortunately, there is a lot of mistrust and miscommunication. I'm really getting to the point where it's not working out with you folks. You try to choose who you do business with and who you want to do it and how you do it. That is not the right way. You got rules and regulations, apply them equally to equal people. In this project, and I put it in the email, we fixed the road and we did it to serve the future of the community. We found out mistakes on the drainage basin and we paid for it. We agreed to take only the raw cost of the land, leaving on the table $300,000, thinking that, you know, let's bury the hatchet and move forward. No, that will in return, it is returned by a knife in the back. That is not the way to do business. You know, when somebody treats you right, you gotta treat him right. But you folks are not treating people equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, and I know that I'm out of time, and I just want to say that I can support this motion on the floor and get this developer paid so we can keep moving forward and build properties just like our Public Works Director or our Public Works Committee Chair said. Thank you. Thank you, Hattie.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Shaffey? Sorry, I know that you were just getting ready to walk out, but I was waiting in the queue to ask you questions because what I'm trying to go back to is at Public Works last week. So this item was on the Public Works agenda last week, and I know that there was going to be a discussion on it, but you came up to the podium last Tuesday, and you said that you had already had an agreement, and Mr. Tech had it, you know, when we addressed it to him, he said, yes, he remembers that you and the staff had come to an agreement, and I don't think it was what the motion is. Can you explain what that agreement was? Because you said it Tuesday, and I thought it was more along the lines of setting up connections, and as the connections were connected, the fees would be collected and then given to you, which is different than what's being proposed today.
Our original estimate, our original request that was submitted and reinstated in November 26 of 2018 and was submitted earlier before that, it was submitted and requesting oversized cost. It did not say anything about connection fees. We were told that there are no funds available, and therefore we would recover the money from these people as they connect, and we will pay it to you. We said, fine, anything is better than nothing. But unfortunately, all of a sudden, the money appears for other projects that are more capable than us to do these extensions. And it's disappointing that we say to certain people that we don't have the money, and to other people, yeah, we have the money. Our project has been on the dais since May 3rd of 2017. It's the first time we started this project. And right now we're in 2019, and we have not gotten off of this do-loop circle, infinite do-loop. Meanwhile, somebody else submits in March of this year and gets approval, and he's going through this process without any question of funding or what have you. Why is that? You know, that does not make sense. We're serving properties that are outside. The people who are outside that we're serving, they don't have any other option but being served through our line. The ones that are at Power and Light, they have the option to go to the 12-inch across the canal to the west, just only 200 feet. But we want to find a way to justify paying certain people and not paying others. That is not the way to do business, folks. You're making yourself look bad. And I tell you what, that's not the way to make this community. This community is great, and you guys are the protectors of this community. I realize you rely on your staff, but you're relying on your staff way the heck too much. I think that there is a point that you got to, there is no reason to come and fight before you for every issue, for every little thing. Meanwhile, the similar issues are being approved through you guys, and you don't even question why is this being approved and why did that get denied. These are the same items in the same agenda. We're saying apples and mangoes. They're all apples, one is red and one is green. And somebody's just trying to paint the apple and make sure that and edit and label it as a mango. That's
Mr.
not right.
Shappy, I understand that you've got a lot of history on this one, because I do remember when you brought it back, and there was a lot of discussion because you had to, based on where the roads were and trying to manipulate this area for the future growth of Rapid City, there was a lot of discussion on that. But what I'm coming back to, and I'm going to bring you, I'm going to try to rope you back in here. On Tuesday, when I asked about this, and I asked the city attorney at that time, can we go ahead and just, you know, make the motion to continue this and let staff and Mr. Shappy, you know, come and make that agreement based on what was agreed before? And the city attorney at that time said it was better because it was different than what was on the agenda for Tuesday, to go ahead and send it to council without recommendation, and then it would be better to have this council make a motion to send it back, if it's an agreement or whatever, to have that worked up, and then put it back on the Public Works agenda so that we could bring it back forth and have the proper notification. What I remember when I was asking that, what I remember you saying is that you and the Public Works Department had already come to an agreement on the construction costs.
We actually had a verbal discussion and a verbal where we acknowledged and agreed to do a connection fee, and we were told that finance does not even like to do that, and then I've got to go through the process again and again, and then I've got to wait. And then by the time I found out through what's on the city council agenda, I was really like, wait a minute, why are we being required to carry the money while people who are not serving as many people are not asked to do the same thing? I mean, I would like to know that. You know, I mean, it's like if I'm wrong, I would like to know it. I'll back off. I don't need that 110,000. I'll donate it if I have to. It's not really just the money, it's the principle. We fought on every little thing on this deal to do what is right. You know, the drainage report in this property, in this basin was done wrong. We paid more money out of our pocket to do what is right and protect the taxpayers because we know what harm it would do. And we elect to do what is right, but unfortunately we get penalized for it. We did you know, like, just to give you an idea, the connection between Creek Drive and East North is about $125,000 to $150,000. Menard platted property that is fronting that road. They were not required to even participate on it, even though it does not front our property. You know, where is the fairness in that? Why are we being required to do it, which we choose to do it? But why is Menard, that is platting against it, they were not required to build it, even though their plat was approved before us, and everybody knows that it is needed? Why do we have to build the whole thing ourselves? Isn't that unfair? I mean, how do you like it if...
So again, I haven't been party to all of these discussions, so I really can't give you an answer because, as it's been stated up here before, I'm not an expert in this type of stuff. So Mr. Shaffey, I'm way out of time. So I appreciate your comments, and so I'm going to just end with this one. Rather than supporting what has been proposed today, I want to take this back and do what the city attorney told us on Tuesday, and that was to send it back to Public Works and have staff come up, if they need to come up with a oversize agreement, and they need to come up with what that construction fee agreement would look like, and then I think the city council could sit down and have a better information rather than trying to negotiate this from the dais.
I promise you this, I will not negotiate with your public works director even over a penny, okay? I will not do that. If you want to negotiate, you bring a third party to negotiate. Otherwise, we'll see you in court.
Thank you, Mr. Shappy. I know this is a very emotional issue, but I'm going to stand by what I said.
Chad Lewis.
Well, the city attorney wants to jump in real quick.
Hey, Joel.
You know, one thing that we haven't really talked about tonight, so here's a traditional oversized situation. A developer needs to install a 8 or 10-inch or whatever size water line, and we say, no, you need to install a 12-inch to serve beyond your development. This discussion happens prior to the plat or the development approval, and there is a negotiation between staff and the developer. An agreement, a written agreement is entered into before the infrastructure is ever built. And we've agreed what the oversized component is, we have an agreement on the costs, and we have a funding source identified. One of the things that concerns me about this request is that this was already built, and then essentially we were submitted a request after the fact. I don't think we want to encourage that. When you look at Mr. Shaffy's example, I'll use Mr. Davis as an example. He built or talks about building some drainage improvements, and then he submitted us a bill for it after the fact. No discussions beforehand. We had no opportunity to budget it. He just said, well, I spent this, you should reimburse me for that. And we absolutely refused to pay him because there was no agreement on our part to pay for any of those. You know, there's other requirements too that come with that. So again, generally when we're talking oversize, it's because the city is telling the developer, you need to build a water line larger or a sewer line larger than what you would otherwise have to build to serve needs beyond your development. That is oversized. But the key to it is, too, to have the discussion. We don't want to get in a situation where, after the fact, people are just submitting us bills for oversize and infrastructure costs when we had no knowledge that we were going to get that bill beforehand. This is all stuff that, frankly, we should be negotiating beforehand. And that, in my experience, is the way it's always occurred. Now, when I look at 27, which is the 5th Street, that was a 16-inch water main, which is generally larger than most development. Now, I can't go into the specifics of what Mr. Davis needed or not. I haven't looked at it, but I would say generally a 16-inch is an oversized water main. Of that, we paid through a negotiated agreement before the infrastructure was built. We agreed to pay, I think it was $42,000 when I looked at it. And the construction fee agreement is not reimbursing Mr. Davis, it's reimbursing the Sewer and Water Enterprise Fund ratepayers for that oversized cost for that line in the amount of $42,000. So, I mean, to me, that is different. It was an agreement that was negotiated beforehand, and it's not reimbursing the developer, it's reimbursing the ratepayers for that oversized cost that both the developer and the city agreed was an actual oversized cost.
Okay, I want to just ask Dale Tech one question to clarify something Joel brought up. On this particular item 70, was there an oversize requirement on this pipe?
No, city staff did not request an oversize requirement for this pipe.
It was engineered to be a 10-inch pipe and proposed and priced to be a 10-inch pipe?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go back to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to continue this item to the next Public Works, if I get a second for discussion.
Second by
Thanks.
Laurenti.
My point beyond doing that is, besides the fact I take incredible exception with the words of Mr. Saffy saying I don't support him, and when I challenge him to find one vote that I haven't supported him on, I will put that aside and realize that there needs to be some, obviously, a little more study of this for the rest of us, or at least to keep procedurally correct, I'm not going to go ahead and vote on something that we don't have a funding source for. I don't think that even, how we can do that. That's quite a burden to put on everybody, staff especially. I was going to ask Mr. Tech if he could speak to some of that. I think Mr. Landine already addressed most of the issues, though, about what the difference between this project and other projects. And I do know about the general, we plan these things out ahead of time before we actually agree to pay them. But once again, in the interest of showing that we do work with developers, and I'm going to say that if you find one vote that I haven't helped you with, I really want to know about it. I vote for developers every single time because I know how hard it is, not just because I'm trying to be a pain. I know how hard it is to develop, but I take credible exception. You can pass it on to Mr. Shaffy for me. I'm really angry with him right now, and I don't appreciate this. I absolutely cannot believe I just had to go through that, or anybody else up here for that matter. But in the interest of making it better, I'm going to continue the item and try to find a solution. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Normally I like Henny's, Mr. Shaffy's work, and I really applaud his efforts to try to do a lot of things. For me, this is an item that is, for me, out of the norm. So Kyle, if you could pass on to Mr. Shaffy for me, please. I like what he's doing. I like what he is attempting to do. But again, this one's out of the norm for me. And the way I'm feeling right now is that we, the council, are placed in the position of being an arbiter. And right now, I have to agree with Mr. Lewis, Alderman Lewis, that I just don't have enough information. I've monitored as many emails going back and forth as I can, so see the discussion that's going on, and some iterations have been taking place in those discussions. So I'm glad to see Mr. Shaffey come back in the room, so I want to say thank you for all your work and everything that you're trying to do for the city. But the concerning part is that the mood that's in the room right now being addressed towards our Public Works Director, I'm not comfortable with that. But again, being placed in the position of being an arbiter, I need some more information. And so with that, all due respect, I just want to see this continued in a civil manner and brought forward in the best possible light that we can get, because this is a project that's needed. Some of these things that I'm seeing out there in this area are good things that are taking place. So if we can come to some kind of resolution on this, and us being placed in the position of being an arbiter, I can support the motion to continue, because I'm for one, again, it's out of the norm. I need some more information. Thank you. I'll yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are clearly some challenges here that go beyond just this issue. And I don't know where, I think there's a lot of history, and it tells me that there's a relationship that's broken down. And I don't, I couldn't tell you how, who, when, where, why, and how long, but it's clearly an issue. But here's the deal. Mr. Shaffey is going to continue to develop, hopefully in Rapid City, but certainly in the Black Hills. Mr. Tech will continue to serve as Public Works Director. And we have to somehow bring that together. And I don't know why it's being made personal from all ends, to be honest. I'm not angry with anybody. I can understand Mr. Shaffey if he feels like it's not being applied fairly. That could be frustrating. And Mr. Check probably feels like he's applying it fairly, and that could be frustrating. So here's what I'm asking. I agree with Mr. Lewis's motion. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you to take the leadership and negotiate on these kind of matters along with our council leadership to help be a third party. If we need to bring the parties to the table to figure out how this is going to work, of course we know that we have to figure out funding sources, but I think that's what the leadership has to step in on in this situation when something is broken down, because we need to continue to develop Rapid City. It's been tremendous what's happened so far, and I believe that Mr. Tech is a good man and a good leader as well in his job, and for some reason there's a breakdown in this relationship. So that would be my request, is if we are going to get back to the table on this, that this might be the time that you have to interject and intervene. And I would also include our council leadership that are elected as part of this process, because we don't want to be tough to do business in Rapids. I mean, we don't want that reputation. Mr. Shaffey, we want to apply the rules evenly to you as to anybody else. And I thought some good points are brought up tonight, and it's tough for us. We are not the experts, as we've all claimed, that we pass all sorts of engineering codes and everything else that we're not experts on either. So, so I guess I want to give Mr. Shaffey, I see you're back in the room, and I got a couple of minutes.
What I would like to do is I'll offer you something else. I'll offer you I'll give up my $110,000 if the city pays $50,000 to hire a legal firm to investigate your agendas of just this year, to show you what kind of discrepancies that don't comply with your laws, with the state law or federal law. And I'll be more than happy to put up my $150,000. As a matter of fact, we'll put the $110,000, and I'll put in $50,000 more out of my pocket. You folks put in $50,000, and we hire, federal prosecutor to investigate these things. because there are a lot of discrepancies that you folks have within your agendas that get approved that are not consistent with federal law, state law, or your own laws. And I don't really know how it happens, but when you sign a contract, I mean, I'll be more than happy to disclose all of these to you. I try to bury the hatchet and go forward, but unfortunately, it's beginning to impact my health because of the way things are being done. It's not because of me personally, because money comes and goes, but because what we're doing to the taxpayers. We're not protecting the taxpayers. We're not doing that. We're not doing our job. If you want to do your job, you got to look at the consistencies and the inconsistencies within your agendas. And it's not just for me, it's for a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all agree we want to be consistent and how that's applied. So I'm not sure where we want to take this from here. There's this issue that we're dealing with, but I think there's a greater issue that we do need to deal with, and that's my point. Thank you.
It's pretty apparent that the conversation going on right now is not taking us anywhere. There's a motion on the floor for postponing this to the May 14th Public Works. So have someone left in the queue that still has a minute. And so we'll continue to have discussion, but I want to keep it to this motion on the floor, please. John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kyle just left. Oh, dang it. That's who I needed to ask my question to. So if we're going to postpone this, I guess I'll have to ask him his question next time. So thank you.
Ms. Modrick used her time.
Do I have 10 seconds?
Sure, 10 seconds.
I just want to know what this new motion is going to get done.
The new motion is
Should I just kick it down the...
This new motion is to postpone until Public Works, and we'll hear from Chad Lewis.
The idea is we don't have a funding source identified, so as it's been pointed out, we have to, we'd have to reapprove it if we were to approve this. Because we told the staff to find us a funding source in order to make an expenditure. I think we have to procedurally reapprove it again anyway. So the idea is to give some time and hopefully maybe some negotiation or whatever needs to go on in between. Thank you.
Well, we can shoot for that May 14th Public Works meeting, but I think in the meantime, there's been a number of allegations made tonight about being unfair and that sort of thing, and we can probably have a summary of some of these comparisons of the agenda, perhaps for that next meeting. So go to the City Attorney one more time.
Well, that's kind of what I was going to say. I think that you have really three options of how to resolve this. You can deny Mr. Shaffey's request. You could approve Mr. Shaffey's request, but you will need to identify a funding source. Or the third potential option would be not for the city to pay it, but to establish a construction fee for him to be reimbursed. Although it seems like at this point he is not really interested in that option. So you're kind of down to the two. I'm assuming that you do want some clarification on some of the, several people tonight have mentioned they don't feel like they have enough information. So maybe some more clarification on what some of the distinctions and with some of the items on the agenda that were pointed out for that. So you are all better prepared for the meeting on the next Public Works meeting.
Darla Drew.
Mayor, can we send questions to Joel so that everybody gets the information they need? Because if we all need more information, frankly, I don't really, but if everybody needs more information, who do we ask?
You can send those to Joel, but I think frankly, to have Public Works go back and recap these agenda items and to further explain the agreement between Mr. Shaffey, I think is going to clear up a lot of murky water here. So let's vote on this. There's a motion to postpone this, and we're shooting for the May 14th Public Works meeting. All in favor of doing that, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 71 is legal finance item. 71, 72 will go to legal finance Vice Chair Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. And item 71 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign agreement for ambulance services between the City of Rapid City and the City of Somerset, and I make a motion to approve.
Second by Lewis, and we have a request from Becky Drury. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. May I direct a question to our fire chief, Rod Seals, please?
Yes.
I did pull this at Legal and Finance the other day, and if you could briefly explain why we are serving or have been serving the city of Somerset. And I'm just concerned that people are going to think that we're pulling fire people away from the city of Rapid and not protecting our own.
So the majority of Somerset has always been covered by Piedmont Ambulance. Piedmont Ambulance did move forward with a public vote to include all of Somerset in their ambulance district. The citizens of Somerset spoke and said they didn't want that. They still continue to provide the service. I should back up. All along since 2003, when we had the ambulance service tossed to the fire department, we've been providing advanced life support to that area. So in the ambulance world, there's basic life support and advanced life support. So we've always had a contract with Piedmont Ambulance to provide that service. So about half the calls that go on out there, we've already been responding to. And so there was a letter drafted back in September from the Piedmont Ambulance District Board to no longer provide the service to the city of Somerset. The city of Somerset approached us as to what are the possibilities of contracting with us, and what's before you tonight is the results of that contract.
And this year, this is a year contract, and we don't lose any money doing this, correct?
No, in fact, the way we have been currently providing it with Piedmont and such is that we just have a set amount that we charge for that ALS intercept. There's no money up front to help us provide that service and buy the equipment and all that we buy on a routine basis. And so this is actually going to provide funding ahead of the calls, if you will, in preparation for those, and then there'll still be billing to the patients direct.
Okay, I thank you for your explanation. I yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Direct a question to Fire Chief, please.
Yes.
Chief Seals, are there going to be any changes in personnel in order to carry on these additional duties, or will it be absorbed with who we currently have?
Yeah, there'll be no changes to equipment, vehicles, or personnel. Just to give you an idea, the call volume that we've experienced out there over the last couple of years, last year we had 72 calls for service in that response area, of which half of those we were already going to provide that ALS, or approximately half. And so it's not like we're talking 35, 40 calls more a year than we were providing.
Okay. Well, then, yeah, if there were more personnel and we had a contract run out and suddenly we had more people than we needed, that might be an issue, but I don't think there's any problem here. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And may I ask a couple follow-up questions of Chief Seals as well?
Please.
Thank you. So Chief, if Rapid City Ambulance has already been providing some service out in this area, and they were paying the Rapid City a small portion, but now you've worked out a formula that can be applied that, has some sense to it, because at least it's a formula that is applied based on population or calls and that type of stuff, and it'll be reviewed. Do we have other areas that we provide ambulance service that is outside of our Rapid City limits?
We do. We provide service to over 2,500 square miles of Pennington County, parts of Custer County, and parts of Meade County. And so there's two different two different phrases in our business. There's districts, and then there's response areas. The Rapid City Fire Department, we do not have an ambulance district for any of the stuff we do. We are a user-based fee collection service, meaning the volume of run numbers that we go on, we've been able to operate that as an enterprise fund since 2003. And so no expense to the taxpayer, it's been a user-based fee. So we do provide a large area outside of the city as well of ambulance service, and have since 2003.
And so what I'm hearing you say, because if it's a user base and the people who are benefiting from the service of our ambulance, that's what comprises the enterprise fund, is it's a fee-based system.
Correct.
And if that's the case, when I read this, unless I'm reading it wrong, this is the city of Somerset is going to be paying the city of Rapid City.
Correct, to provide that service up front. And so
That's different than a fee base.
it is, and it wasn't part of our response area that we inherited in 2003. And I can tell you, not to put you on alarm, but I can tell you that as we've seen certain parts of our users, that like IHS, like the VA, user groups that we provide service to, as their reimbursement rates have been declining. I don't know what the future holds, but I can certainly say providing it just on a user-based only may not be something that's, that we can achieve in the future. And so I think you're going to see more things like this. But being that this wasn't part of our original response area, we felt that it was best to contract with them. And we do have 2 other contracts in place, one with Kanata Basin, one also with an area of Custer County that's in the Hermosa area.
And so these other portions of, I think you mentioned 3 other counties that are currently part of our district, or our service area.
Response area.
Response area. Are you looking at potentially looking at trying to set up some type of fee from the counties to be paid
Certainly, we're
directly
looking
to
at all options right now, yes. You know, again, one thing that gets interesting in the state of South Dakota is that you're a municipality, you're required by state law to provide fire police service. In the state of South Dakota, ambulances are known as a non-essential service, which is kind of a head scratcher in that. And so I think this isn't certainly a local problem, this is a state problem, and we're going to see that as we have a larger push to keep people in their homes longer. And in South Dakota is not building more nursing homes or anything, so I think we're going to see this evolve over time.
Yeah, and as you said, and I'll just reiterate it because it's a good point to bring up, our Rapid City Ambulance Service is an enterprise fund which is based on fees. Even when we charge other municipalities or counties or anything else, it's still a fee base. And with insurance rates cutting back all the time, what we're able to recoup on what it actually costs to go out on those runs is the margin is going to get smaller and smaller. So, but thank you for answering all the questions, and thank you for at least having the capacity and the relationship in order to make sure that we've even got citizens outside of our city limits that can still get health services that they need. Thank you, Mayor. I yield.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, I think this discussion is good, but I would like to encourage getting back to the motion so that we can deal with Somerset. But I would be very interested in having a future discussion on just this topic at some point, sometime, because I think it's a very critical issue that we're going to be facing in the near future. And so if we can have that discussion at another time, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval of item 71. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 72 is to approve Resolution 2019-035, a resolution amending certain fees to be charged in 2019 for various licenses, permits, and applications. And I make a motion to amend the resolution to include, or I should say, to amend the parking fines back to the original proposed amounts for the new parking management plan. And if I can get a second, I'd like to maintain the floor as well.
Second for discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to get that amendment out there, and I want to say that what we need to do here is, like we did on the other items, is to stick to the plan that was based on all of the data, and we heard it's at Legal and Finance. They were using more than 44 or 45,000 data points, and that is plenty of data. Coming from a statistical standpoint, ladies and gentlemen, even if there are, say, 300,000 or 400,000 total in a year that we would track, believe me, 45,000 data points are very representative of a total of even over 1 million in that population. So the point here is that the fine was proposed at its original amount because they based it on data and previous other plans in other cities based on the fact that the fine needs to be punitive, and it needs to be punitive so that it doesn't get applied, or it gets applied very rarely. When we make the fee, or the fine, if you will, very close to the cost of parking down there long term, now we have people who will park downtown going, it's really close to feeding the meter or extending on my app. We need to make sure that it's punitive, that it's something everybody wants to avoid. And if we don't do that, then we will be handing out more fines. So I just want to stress to my colleagues that this was part of the plan. This should have never been changed, because the plan was the plan, and we need to implement the plan like we have the other two parts of this plan and see how it's going to perform and let the data determine what the fine should be if it changes, not at the whim of 2 or 3 or 4 business owners and 1 or 2 or 3 council people. We need to trust the plan and move forward and let the parking committee do its job. I yield.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I seconded this for discussion because I want some clarification on some information. May I ask the Chief Financial Officer a question, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Pauline, Alderman Laurenti has made the motion to put the fees, because this is a resolution, so it only takes 1 reading and it'll go into effect, on the late fees or penalty fees, whatever I'm trying to say, back to what was originally proposed. What I'm going to ask you to do is, can you please remind us what was originally proposed? Because I think it was a graduated scale, and we tried to top it out where it didn't go over so much, but there's a lot of time in between there.
Correct. And Sarah can chime in too if I remember this incorrectly. But the original fee or fine for overstaying their time, whether it's on the meter or the timed parking areas, was going to be $25. And then I believe after 7 days it was an additional 10. And then after 30 days it was an additional 15 for a total of $50 if somebody didn't pay their parking ticket for 30 days. Then it would go to collections, and they would get reimburse the city that way.
Okay, and thank you. And thank you for that information. I think the council needed to hear it if we're going to try to pass this fee resolution tonight. And the only other comment I wanted to make is that the mayor was at Thursday night's meeting, and I liked what the mayor said. So I'm just going to reiterate it. I won't be able to say it as good as he did because it was off the cuff as he usually does. But he said, you know, when we're looking at fines, who in their right mind would go out and purposely try to overextend their stay so you have to pay a fine? So the point is that if the fines are significant, it makes people compliant to the rules of parking, whether they need to either feed the meter or move their vehicle. So, Mayor, you know I often don't sing your praises, but I thought that was a really good comment you made. Thank you. I yield.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, if we want to really muddy this thing up, we're going to go with this motion that's on the floor by a council member that didn't even attend any of these meetings to find out that a lot of discussion, a lot of weighing out of what the fine is, and now you're going to selectively put the fine in here is back to $25, which is not on our link. It had been worked and reworked by these meetings, by solutions, not complaints, by the staff, who also reworked this and said that this could be the right number to bring in at this time. Now that we're moving a board before, if they don't think it's enough, they can change it. But we've got on our table right now a current red line of what is being recommended to this council, and now you want to micromanage a fee system when you're against micromanaging. So this does not make any sense. This motion doesn't. We need to take it back to what's before us. If you want support, you need to understand the work that's been done. You should go to the meetings if you want to know more information about how this becomes what it does. This came down to 15 because it was a reasonable number. It became a number that benefited everybody. We don't want to discourage parking. We want to encourage parking. This isn't to say go away. This is to say come down, shop, dine, entertain, be part of our community. Why we would want to infuse fines that are substantially cumbersome, not to mention what it does financially to anybody that gets that fine. It doesn't matter how much they make. That's harsh way to go. You've convinced me that we've got to put it in the hands of the board. Then why are we going to micro this one now, piece by piece? Now we're going to go back to piecemeal. And maybe Sarah can add something more as to why this recommendation is coming before us today with the red line, because this is what's before us, not piecemealing it. Sarah, you or Kathy, I know you're bringing this recommendation to us as it's linked in. And I think you made a modest decision, and if you could share that for me.
Yeah, it really goes down to behavior. Our main concern is that the fee is high enough that it influences behavior. You know, we were willing to compromise down to 15, but we're talking about a $10 difference here, so.
And on the 15, if you had been in those meetings, there was some research that was done by some of the business owners who will be affected by people that might get a fine because they missed it by a minute. And that research came back that nobody was at a 25 that's a comparison of our community. It was running $10, 15 at the max. So that was a compromise that was made during these public meetings, and it was important that that came down, and then that took it off the table of complaint and allowed the group to move towards the next solution to the question. So, boy, if you want to complain and caution the council over micromanagement, then this is the way to do it. Thank you.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I completely agree with the spirit of the motion, I mean, there's a reason that there's a death penalty that you can get the death penalty for killing somebody because that's supposed to deter you from doing it, you know. So the idea of having a $25 fine is supposed to deter you from breaking the law, not you know, it's not supposed to be, it's a penalty, but it's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to keep you from doing it, and that's the intention of it. I realize that. And I don't know why I completely agree with that, and I think we should do that. We've already had some people met together, came to a compromise. The public thought that's what we're voting on tonight, and if we change that right now when they all left the room and there's no media here anymore, they're going to barbecue us. And I think it's going to be a lot of, and justifiably so, in a lot of ways, just because everybody thought they had one agreement and then we change it. And so I think that while I do agree with the idea that it should be $25, even though because the mayor obviously made a great point about, you know, everybody used to speed in Montana because it was $5. You just put $10 on your dashboard and kiss it goodbye. So the idea, I totally understand why we should have a $25, but I think right now if we go ahead and vote on it when no one's here and the media's gone, it's not going to look too good. So I'm going to stay with the original negotiated $15 at this point, just because of that reason alone. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to ask a clarifying question. May I address the city attorney, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Joel, I know there's been a lot of discussion as far as passing the ordinances that we passed tonight for the parking downtown and trying to separate and get the city council out from that micromanagement. But I believe that the city council will always have the approval of any fees. So if we approve these fees tonight, as presented or motion back, however this vote goes, the committee, the parking committee, can't arbitrarily change these fees. They have to make a recommendation that has to come back through city council. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct. The fees that are set can't be changed by the committee. I think the thought was when we discussed it at the staff level, $25 was viewed as that'll change people's behavior. After listening to the discussion, we decided, okay, maybe the approach, because some of the other things we could compromise on was lowering it. So the 15 was determined because it was still higher than the fine amount. 10 was too low because you could pay for a meter all day and it would cost you $1 more than the fine. And I think the hope is with some of the data we get, if we find the 15 is not changing people's behavior, then we would hopefully have the data to come back and be able to justify increasing the fines at that point in time.
Thank you. And so I just wanted to make everybody aware of that the committee be informed as far as the parking management is going to be managing the parking downtown and you know, listening to the business owners and listening to staff and putting up that best parking plan depending on each individual businesses on each individual block. And so, and as we can put more meters in to get that turnover, that's the plan. But when it comes to actually setting fees, whether it's the parking meter per hour or a penalty fee or a fine, that still has to come back through City Council. So with that said, I could support what was presented tonight because I do agree with Alderman Lewis. I hadn't really thought about that, but it was presented, it's been read by the public, this is what's been published, and when we get that other data, if the behavior is not changed, we can always increase the fines after summer. No, when we get the data. Thank you, I yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a substitute motion to approve as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from John Roberts and somebody else. Any other discussion on the issue? Joel, did you need back in? Okay. Back to Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will personally support this.
Okay, then the motion on the floor is to approve this item as written on the agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Items 73, 74, 75 are all some form of alcohol license renewal, and I don't believe the police chief has red flagged any of these items as being an issue needing separate discussion. So if we could have a motion to approve 73, 74, and 75, and okay. So take item 73 then, retail malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license renewals.
Move to approve item
Motion Scott, second Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 74, 2019 retail malt beverage South Dakota farm wine license renewals with video lottery.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion Scott, second Drew. Abstention from Roberts. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with one abstention. Item number 75 is 2019 retail malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license renewal.
Move to approve item number 75.
Scott moves. Drury seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us down to public hearing items 73 or 76 through 83, and we don't have any speakers for this public hearing, so we'll move on to consent public hearing items 76 through 82. Okay, we have a motion to approve 77 through 82. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Move to approve item.
Okay, motion to approve item 76 from Scott, second by Drury, and abstention from Roberts. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. It's the end of consent. A non-consent public hearing item number 83, second reading ordinance 6319, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for Westview Land Company, LLC, for a rezoning request from General Commercial District to Light Industrial District for property generally described as being located at 2000 Deadwood Avenue.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Drew, second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 84, the bill list, will go to the Finance Officer Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no additions to the bill list, so the total is that which is attached at $7,189,551.14.
Okay, motion approved by Solomon and a second by Lewis. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn and a second. And any objection here? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.